All right. Welcome to another episode of The Close-Up. I'm your host, Stephen Cameron. And today we got a fun day. We got Orlando Magic writer Josh Cohan joins the show. We get into a lot of really cool things. We talk about we first take a look at the Magic's season as a whole, the struggle that they had in that first 5 games, and then kind of them coming out and starting to find themselves, finding their defense again. We kind of break down what caused a lot of those early season struggles. And we also talk about why they've been struggling a little bit as of late. They have shown some improvement. They are top 6 in the league defensively. They are just outside of the top 10 offensively in like the last 9 games there. And they're dealing with some health issues. Jalen Suggs is out with a groin injury, or just missed the Rockets game with a groin injury. He's questionable for the Golden State game. Paolo Banchero has missed a few games now. He exited the New York Knicks game with a groin injury and has now missed 2 games since then, the Nets game and now the Rockets game, as well as the upcoming Golden State game. He's already been ruled out for that game on Tuesday. So it doesn't seem like either one of them will be out too long. Like I said, Suggs is questionable. He could potentially be back for the Golden State game. Paulo, I imagine he'll be back sooner than later. The Magic just finished a 1-game road trip over to Houston, and they lost that game in overtime. It was a very exciting game to watch. Unfortunately, it didn't end well, but I really just thought that was just a fun game. Kevin Durant is still incredible at his old age. Franz Wagner, Desmond, Bane, Tristan da Silva, particularly in that first half, those guys just could not miss. Da Silva he is just awesome this year. I'm having so much fun seeing what he is able to do. His 3-point shooting is super confident right now. He's doing a lot more stuff off the dribble too, which has been really exciting. He is just playing with so much confidence. It's clear that FIBA was just a really great experience for him, and in year 2 has just been really good. He's vital to this team's success, in my opinion. But the Magic are going to be home now for the next 3 games. They play Golden State on the 18th. They play the Los Angeles Clippers on November 12th. Then the New York Knicks come back on 22nd. So that's the 3-game homestand they have going on right now. And then they're going to round out the month with a 3-game road trip to the Boston Celtics, which is actually a back-to-back game from the New York Knicks. So they play the Knicks at Kia Center on the 22nd. Then they travel to Boston on the 23rd for the Boston Celtics game. From there, they'll go to play Philly, and then they will end that 3-game road trip and the month of November with a road trip back to Pistons to Detroit so they can get a game back from them. We would like to get that game back. They lost their first matchup with the Pistons earlier this season, and I would like for them to take that back. Interesting that they're playing Boston again. They've already played them twice. This is the 3rd time they're going to play them, and then they'll only play them 1 more time the rest of the season, which is it just feels like a lot. I'm not used to them almost being done with a complete series this early in the season. I'm really hopeful that the Magic can find themselves. I went into that Rockets game thinking they were just going to get their butts kicked, and they didn't. They, in fact, led most of the game. There were some really big shots made by the Rockets as part of the reason why the Magic didn't win. Magic also missed a few opportunities on their side. But in general, I was just really impressed with how they defended and how they executed offensively. I believe that they can put up that kind of performance. They should definitely be in the fight for all of these games right now coming up. That's even without Paulo and Jalen Suggs coming back right around the corner. This Warriors team doesn't scare me. Steph Curry can always put you in trouble. He can always go off for one of his 46, 47-point games, making 10 threes. They just had a really impressive game against the Spurs recently. But that's a game I still think the Magic can win at home, particularly if Jalen Suggs is back. Him and Anthony Black can hopefully be really challenging defenders for Steph Curry. And then the Clippers, they're not a scary team this season. Then the Knicks, we know we can beat the Knicks. We did it in Madison Square Garden. They can do it again in Kia Center. So I'm being greedy. I want the Magic to win all 3 of those games. If they went 2-1 at home, that would be solid as well. They definitely can't go any worse than 2-1. That's a disappointment at this point in time with where we are at with the Orlando Magic and them sitting 7-7 right now in 9th place. Again, just really, it's like 2 games out of 2nd or 3rd. Sorry, I'm not really too worried about where they are in the standings, but I would have liked them to be above 500 right now. And right now they're not. They are exactly 500, which is annoying. So then if we're looking at the next 3 games, you got Boston Celtics. They're a peskier team than I think we all kind of thought. They're where are they in the standings right now? They are just below the Magic. They're also 7-7. We've played them twice. Magic beat them once and they got beat once. So that's a team I would like for them to right the ship and beat again. 76ers definitely need to beat them. We lost to them without Joel Embiid, without Paul George. I don't think Paul George has played a game yet. BJ Edgecombe and Tyrese Maxey just lit up the Magic the last time we played them. I would like for the Magic to win that game. The Detroit Pistons, they are insane right now. They have the best record in the East. They're 11-2. They are just a very, very good basketball team right now. If they are going to lose any of those games on that 3-game road trip, I would be understanding if it was the Pistons, because they are just that's the best team out of the 3 that out of the Celtics and 76ers. The Pistons are the best team in the East right now. And so I would love to win that game, but if you're going to lose one of them, I hope it's not to the 76ers. Beat the teams you're supposed to beat. All right. I'm not going to hold off the conversation too much longer. Josh was awesome to talk to. He's a really good basketball mind. I think he covers the Magic very well. He's very analytically driven. He understands what's going on in the basketball court. He's not just chasing stories. He's really good with that. Before we get to that conversation, I want to remind you all, we have a really awesome Patreon program. It involves a really active Discord community. We talk all the time throughout games, through non-games. It's a very good, healthy community for you to join. We do Patreon subscriber only giveaways. We do exclusive content just for you guys, and you can join as little as $5 a month, and that really helps us support the show and keep doing what we're doing for you all. You can find the link to the Patreon subscription below, and then we'd love for you also to like and subscribe to this podcast. If you are watching it on YouTube or if you're listening to it, to give us a review, that would be super helpful. It's that time of year again. The NFL is rolling and the NBA is back. Our friends over at Underdog Fantasy have you covered for all the action. If you're new to Underdog, it's the perfect time to join. Check it out. Use promo code MAGICHQ and you'll get $100 bonus entries when you play your first $5 entries, win or lose. We've been partnering with Underdog for a while now, and trust me, it's the best offer they have ever dropped. You're not going to want to miss it, okay? When I joined on a promo. The offer was not as good as it is right now. Here's how Underdog works, okay? It's a fantasy game. You just pick higher and lower on players' stats or projections, and you're in the game, and you can shoot up to 5,000 times your money on what your play is. So you just string 2 or 3 players together, depending on what their stat line or projection is for that. And if you pick higher or lower and hit on it, you can double or triple or quadruple and so on and so forth your entry for it. One that I really love hitting on right now is Tristan da Silva over. He's been really great. I've also really I've been looking at more of the role players, right? Not so much the big guys, not so much Franz and Bane and Paolo, but Anthony Black and his assist numbers or his rebounds has been really fun. Like I said, Tristan da Silva. I've been going on Wendell Carter Jr.'s 3 points. Oftentimes it's at 0.5. So all he has to do is hit 1 a game, and that's a fun hit to play on as well. So check that out. If you're in Florida, it's totally valid there. I actually signed up in Florida. They've expanded to Florida. It's a great place to play. So use promo code MAGICHQ when you sign up and grab that $100 in bonus entries. Play responsibly, have fun, and let's make some winning entries together. All right, that's it. Let's get in the conversation with Josh Cohan of Orlando Magic. All right, everyone, like I said in the intro, we got my friend Josh Cohan, Orlando Magic writer. Josh, how's it going today? Thanks for joining the show.
It's great. Thanks so much for having me on, Steven. Always appreciated. Glad to talk Magic hoops with you.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun conversation, I think. The Magic right now, they're sitting 7-7. They just had a very exciting, unfortunately lost, but overtime game versus the Houston Rockets where, we hear going into that game, Jalen Suggs is going to miss the game. We already know Paolo Banchero's out. I didn't have high hopes, and then all of a sudden I was on the seat of my pants the entire game, just on edge because it was just so fun watching the Magic, for the most part, play pretty well. They didn't close like we hoped they would, but there was a lot of fun that went on in that game. I thought it was just, big shots made by both teams. And now they get to come back to Kia Center for, I believe, a 3-game homestand for them to continue to kind of figure out what's going on with this team. Josh, this team started off really kind of weird and slow and not great. They had a lot of things to figure out. Obviously, we know there was a lot of big things happening in the offseason. They acquired Desmond Bane. They got a new head coach that kind of helped with, or not head coach, a new coach with Joe Prunty, kind of helping revitalize some of the offensive schemes and systems that they're running. We know Coach Mosley wanted to improve on some of those things, play with more pace, play with more space, and just, no longer struggle on that side of the ball on the offensive side, and as well as the 3-point shooting. With that, they went 1-5 with a 4-game losing streak. But since then, they've gone 6-3 in the last 9 games to bring them to a record of 7-7 right now, sitting, I think, 10th or 10th in the standings. That's irrelevant at this point. I first want to just kind of take the picture back and talk kind of why it's been, I think, harder than any of us anticipated for this team to kind of find themselves both offensively and defensively. Because granted, I think they figured out a lot of the defensive stuff. They in the last 8 or 9 games, I think they're 6th in the league defensively. They have 109.5 defensive rating in the last 8 games. And so I guess my question to you, Josh, and where I want to start this conversation is, why do we think it took so long for some of this stuff to gel? And what are some the big differences you're seeing with some of the newer things they are integrating into both sides of the ball, with the faster pace of play, with trying to make the offense a bit more creative by utilizing tools that we have with Desmond Bane? Just kind of wanted to get your thought process on kind of why the season has started much slower and less successful than I think a lot of us would have hoped for, with kind of how they looked at the end of last year, getting Desmond Bane integrated into the team, and the high expectations not only we have on this team, but they have also put on themselves.
Yeah, I think we need to start with the mission of quote unquote playing faster, but playing faster comes in different variations. For some teams, playing fast is simply getting out on the move consistently and playing fast and furious. In the Magic's case, it's more about being calculated with how they play with pace. As Jamal Mosley has said repeatedly, it's about getting stops first, then it's about pushing the pace. So because they're so calculated, it took a little bit of time to figure out how they can make sure they're converting at a high percentage every time they push the pace and move the ball in transition. And that is now a very effective weapon for them, because right now for the season, they do rank number 1 in transition shooting percentage. It's a little over 62%. And that's a major upgrade from last year when they shot only about 51% in transition with far fewer attempts. Franz, Anthony Black, and Paolo Banchero all in the top 5 in transition shooting percentage. The big issue early in the season, 2 main things. Number 1, they were fouling excessively. So they weren't able to get those stops and get into a rhythm and get out and run as much as they were hoping. And when they did get out and run, I think they were still trying to figure out how they can make sure they convert at a high enough rate. But the other major problem was the turnovers. They ranked in the bottom 10 over the first several games in turnovers. Over the last 6, they rank in the top 10 in limiting turnovers. So to me, that's a big turnaround for them. If they don't turn the ball over and they're getting back into their half-court defense, obviously they're going to follow their principles, and that's when they'll be an effective defensive team, and they'll be able to push the pace at a calculated level to convert more frequently in transition. So I think that's the main thing from a pace standpoint. The other major thing I would bring up is there's a lot more off-ball screening in the half-court. Now, have they converted enough in those sets? That remains to be seen how it'll all shake out, but they're setting a lot more screens in the half court than they did last year, trying to free up certain guys, bringing Franz off action. And for the most part, I think lately it's been very effective. The other big thing, I know we're going to talk more about Paolo, but the big thing is because they're so good at getting into the paint, the priority always is to spray out from the paint. That's how you generate your best 3-point looks. And when Paolo has done that, it's been the Magic's best half-court weapon, because statistically, the Magic are shooting 50% from 3 when Paolo kicks the ball out. That's not just from the paint, but that's just a general kick out. So it could be right above the 3-point line, or it could be into the paint. So it depends. But the bottom line is they're shooting a good percentage when Paolo does not only get into the paint, but he uses his instincts and vision to find shooters on the perimeter. So those are some things that I think have been really high level in the first, 14 games, especially over the last, 7 or 8.
I've really enjoyed seeing the integration of the Paolo Desmond pick and roll. I feel like every time we see that combo in a pick and roll, it leads to a good look. Whether it's a look that actually goes in or not is a different question, different thing. But in the general, like, I don't think I've seen a bad look of scoring happen off of a Paolo Desmond Bane pick and roll. I'm sure there's been a couple that have gotten defended pretty well, but for the most part, I'm just like, wow, we should just run that pick and roll like every single time down the floor when things slow down enough, because it just looks so good. And I've really enjoyed what that's brought out of. The offense does seem more creative in ways, right? Like you mentioned, there does seem to be more screening. There does seem to be a little bit more off-ball movement. I do feel like they're getting a little bit more creative with how they're utilizing the pick and rolls, like with Paolo and Desmond, as I was just talking about. It seemed like they started a little bit slower on that and then started increasing the volume of how they're running that. And you're right. Their transition offense has been pretty awesome, to say the least, in my opinion, recently. And what the stats that you brought up back that up. Defensively, do you think the point of like the turnovers affecting them getting into their defensive set and how many turnovers they were having at the beginning of the season was like atrocious. So like that makes total sense. But do you think they're missing a little bit of the point of attack defense that they had depth wise last year and the guard and wings compared to what they have now? Like, people might feel certain ways when I say these names, but like Gary Harrison, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, whatever you want to say about them offensively, defensively, they were both capable of being point of attack defenders. You're taking that away and you have Desmond Bane and Tyus Jones kind of playing those roles now. And Bane is capable, but that's definitely not his strength, in my opinion, on the defensive end. And Tyus Jones, I'll just leave it there. I don't really want to mention what I actually think about his defense, because he's not a point of attack defender, right? We'll just say it like that. He's someone who unfortunately is more of a liability on the defensive end, in my perspective. How much do you think personnel shift with the defense has kind of affected how they play defense? Because like they're a very good defensive team. Like we mentioned, they're in the last 8-9 games, they're back to being 6, but it still doesn't feel like they're smothering teams with their defense as they were in years past.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point from the standpoint of they're not turning opponents over as much as they did the last 2 years. Now, we have to remember that Jalen hasn't played in every game.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I think that is a factor with that. But they're also trying to do a better job with their technique. Remember, we talked earlier about trying not to foul excessively. And I think in the beginning of the year, they were so focused on trying to force turnovers, but It was causing a lot of unnecessary fouls. I think they've scaled back a little bit on that. They're still aggressive. And I think the biggest thing is they want to run opponents off the 3-point line. That's the number one goal every time, because obviously the less threes opponents get up, the less opportunity they have for good looks. They're guarding the paint really well, even though technically opponents are scoring a lot in the paint, but that's only because they're running them off the 3-point line. But from a defensive field goal percentage standpoint, the Magic are guarding the paint really well. Yeah. So from the standpoint of running off opponents off the 3-point line, forcing them to collapse into the paint and have as much interior backside help, which they've done pretty good. As far as Wendell Carter Jr. has been one of the best in the league as far as protecting the paint. He's not really a shot blocker, but he's very good at contesting, getting his hand straight up and avoiding those fouls, as we talked about, even though he has been in foul trouble a couple times the last several games. But for the most part, I think he's done a really good job avoiding that. So yeah, they're not turning opponents over as much, but again, I think it's more technique based. I think they're trying to be smothering without being, making silly fouls, silly situations where they're putting opponents on the free throw line. And I think they've done a pretty good job of that over the last several games. We'll see if they start turning it up again with the intensity to force more turnovers, because obviously that would increase more transition opportunities. But it's really about getting stops more so than anything else. And yeah, the last 2 years, what they specialized in was forcing opponent turnovers. They ranked in the top, 5 in that the last 2 years. This year, I think they're around like 20. So they've dropped somewhat significantly to this point. But again, opponent 3-point attempts, opponent 3-point percentage in the paint, those are all really favorable right now for the Magic. So I think they're pretty much getting back to what they were defensively from a physicality standpoint, from a relentlessness standpoint. It's just a matter of making sure that they're not fouling excessively, like I mentioned before.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I do want to touch on the point of, like, you mentioned Wendell Carter Jr. not necessarily being like a block, like a shot blocker too much. The team is still top 5 in the league in blocks. I was looking it up this morning, and they average 5.8 blocks per game. And something I was talking about on one of my previous podcasts was Paolo's defensive and rim protection ability this year has gone up significantly. He's averaging almost a full block a game right now, and that is a career high for him. It's actually 0.9. I think a week or two ago it was actually like 1.3. It's come down a little bit, but I've been really impressed with how he has become a little bit more of a rim protector in that sense as well, which has been really just kind of fun to see. I think some of those like early games where a lot of us were a little worried about the defense, it's definitely like slowed down a bit. I'm slowed down a bit. I'm not nearly as concerned about that as I once was, but it was weird for them to like, kind of not have that identity at the beginning of the season for sure. Definitely encouraging to see where it's at today though. I want to talk about Desmond Bane for a little bit because he was a huge transaction for this and an investment for this team this offseason. The Magic were one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the league last year. In the last multiple years, they get one of the best 3-point shooters in the league. It took him a little bit to find his way, and I think there was just a lot of newness for this team in general, new systems that they're trying to play in, new players, not just like a role player, but a really important player who's going to have a high responsibility in this offense as well and the defense. And he's, again, he had a little bit of a slower start. He seems to be finding his way much better. But in general, how have you seen Desmond Bane get utilized, and like, what have you noticed within his process getting a bit more comfortable with his role within the Magic?
Yeah, I think the number one thing to always bring up with him, especially on this team, is that they're crowding him every time at the 3-point line. Yeah. So he's having to make some tough decisions. I think he's been really good from the standpoint of not forcing up ill-advised 3-pointers. I understand that his specialty, quote unquote, is 3-point shooting, but we're not talking about a player that's going to take 27-foot contested threes and make them at a high clip. I don't think very many players can do that effectively. I think he's been smart in the approach as far as not forcing up unnecessary threes. So I think that's a key. So his 3-point attempts are obviously down. That's clear as day. That shows in the numbers. But for the most part, I think the threes he's taking they're considered high quality threes. They're either opened or lightly contested, or they're coming off spray outs by his teammates. So he's taken a few off the dribble threes, which he's capable of doing. Has made a few. I think he's made 6 so far. But for the most part, he's limited the number of threes he's taken if there's a crowd around him, and he's done a really good job attacking the closeouts. And that's something he does effectively. He's always done that really well. Now, he doesn't have blazing speed off the dribble. And I think that in the half court, that's one of the Magic's, I would say, weaknesses is that, their dribble penetration, they rely much more on their strength, their power, and their finesse, not so much their speed. And I think with Desmond, he uses his body to his advantage to kind of shield off defenders, get into the paint. He's really good at making tough contested shots when he's driving toward the basket. And he's got a really good percentage on those this year. So he doesn't draw nearly as many fouls as Paolo and Franz, but that's not what they're really asking him to do. And then his playmaking has been superb. He makes the right read almost every single time. So in games where his assist numbers are high, it's because he's recognizing that there's some extra coverage on him, and he's finding guys in the dunker spot. He's finding guys right on the perimeter for those kickouts. He's finding guys, diving to the basket, rolling. Like you said before, the pick and rolls with Paolo and him. Franz and him lately. That's been really effective. And he's comfortable playing in transition. Now, he hasn't gotten up many 3-point looks in transition, which is what he did a lot of in Memphis. We'll see as time goes whether there'll be an increase in that. But I think he's finishing well in transition. He's just not getting up many threes in transition, which I think some people thought was going to be at a higher number to this point. But I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing that enhanced in the future games, in the near games, because we know that he's capable of shooting on the move, shooting in relocation. Yeah. He's been very good at that throughout his career. So yeah, I think lately he's picked it up in a lot of different ways, but those are the main things that I've seen that have been pretty effective so far.
I've really loved watching how he navigates closeouts when he is on the three, and his ability to just take that and drive to the basket, use his body to help create some separation when he is getting, when there's contact there. It's like, we haven't really had a player that can do that. When you compare his game to, what we're used to last year with KCP, who is definitely a little bit more limited with what he could do with the ball in his hands. KCP could, do like 1 or 2 dribbles and take a nice little midi off of a closeout, but he wasn't necessarily always driving to, get the ball, close into the paint for, something in that area as an opportunity to score, where, Desmond can do that, but not only do that, will also like kick out to an open man and it be probably a pretty high percentage pass to that person. It's just been really nice to kind of see that. The few times that we have seen him take some threes off the dribble, like I haven't been mad at that because like we just don't have many players, especially when you like think like Cole Anthony was one of the few people that was doing that last year. We don't have him. We have, someone in theory who's much better at that. Not in theory, is simply much better at that than Cole Anthony was. It's nice to see. I do look forward to hopefully seeing him do a little bit more threes in transition because he was really good at that. And part of me just thinks like, it's just how the transition happened to break out and who's on the ball and where he's out on the court with the movement of the team to get up there. Like maybe he just hasn't had as many opportunities to do that, but it's been fun. And I don't know, man, I can't wait to see him really like have one of those games where he is just on fire from three. Like, and maybe that will come when Suggs has no more minutes restriction and he's pulling more defenses at the perimeter as well. And Bane isn't getting as much coverage in that area. I mean, I think Bane is always going to get covered there, but and hopefully when he gets hot, it's in Kia Center and the crowd is just going wild. Cause like, I know there's going to be a game coming up where he's hitting 6 or 7 threes in a game and it's going to be pretty insane, I think.
Yeah. And I wanted to mention as well with the transition threes, what's interesting and one of the main reasons why the Magic have such a high field goal percentage in transition is that they have the third highest percentage of shots taken in transition in the restricted areas. So when they're attacking in transition, they're getting all the way to the basket or they're drawing fouls, which obviously they're number one in the league at. But as far as the shots they're taking in transition, they're right at the hoop, which I think is more favorable than settling for the threes.
Totally.
They're 28th in percentage of shots taken in transition from three. So if you think about the difference there, and one of the main reasons, again, why they're shooting such a high percentage from in transition is because they're getting all the way downhill. They're getting all the way to the hoop. So they're finishing right at the basket. A lot of teams will look, either they'll stop on a dime from three or they'll get into the paint and get all the way to the basket. But then there's a spray out at the very end to take the three because there's no coverage there to contest the three. It all depends on preference and it depends on your personnel. But I actually think for the Magic, with Paolo and Franz in particular, it's most favorable when they're right at the basket.
Yeah.
So if they're the ones who are pushing the pace and they're getting all the way to the hoop, I think the best option is to either have them score right at the basket or get fouled, then settle for a three. And I know in some instances, if Desmond's wide open, obviously, because he's their best shooter overall, that might be a good opportunity. But I think what's working is the fact that they're getting all the way to the basket in transition. So I just wanted to emphasize that because, yes, they're not getting up many threes in transition, but I think partially it's by design.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and when you have players like, Anthony Black and Franz and Paolo that have the size and the length to take advantages of, guys off balance or not quite in their defensive set, like you want to have those higher percentage shots. Like it's a higher percentage opportunity to be taking a shot in the paint or like you mentioned, getting to the free throw line instead of a trailing three or an off the dribble three or something like that. It's just, you're going to have a higher percentage and that just makes sense if that is their strategy, which you're right. It probably is their strategy to do that. Speaking of Anthony Black, he has improved a lot at the rim this year. His finishing is greatly improved. His defense is as advertised, really, really well. I've really liked how he has played with the starters. It seems like in general, he is making strides in the right direction. He's still, when he makes mistakes, they seem pretty loud. As I heard Philip say, our friend Philip Rossman-Reich, he said that. And ever since he said his mistakes are loud, I'm like, oh yeah, that's like the perfect way to describe them. And he's still having some turnover issues with some of his decision-making and losing his handle a little bit here and there. Do you think these are things that he can improve on throughout the season? Just where are you at with Anthony Black and his development? Granted, he has been tasked with a little bit of a awkward role for the moment because he has had to fill in so much for Jalen Suggs with missing back-to-backs right now, limited minutes. So he's playing a lot with both units, but in general, I just kind of wanted to get a temperature check on where you're at with Anthony Black.
Yeah, you touched on the defense. Obviously, that's his bread and butter. One of the big stats to me with him is that his defensive blow-by percentage on drives is 16.4%. And that's a top 5 mark amongst qualified players. So right there, you know that he's locked in defensively when he's guarding on the ball, which is his primary agenda. Being 6'8", 6'9", his contesting is phenomenal. It's extremely hard to get clean looks over him. There's a reason why opponents shoot a very poor percentage from 3 when he's contesting, and that's been consistent for his entire career so far. He's been one of the best at that since he came into the league. So defensively, I don't think there's really any weaknesses.
No.
I mean, he's across the board an elite defender. I mean, whether he'll ever get consideration for an all-defensive team remains to be seen. He'll have to get enough playing time, I think, to be qualified for things like that, but at least get enough eyes on it for people to realize just how good of a defender he is. You also mentioned offensively the touch. It is substantially better. He's much craftier with his finishing. He's able to switch hands a little more. He's able to
got a few more moves
at the rim. He is getting blocked a little bit, still too much, but I think that's kind of something that he may kind of deal with throughout his entire career, because he doesn't have the most electric game as far as he doesn't have blazing speed.
Yeah.
He doesn't have high flying ability. He's not like a super athlete, but he's very functional. He's a very functional athlete. He moves very smoothly. He's very crafty. Like I mentioned, he's pretty creative, and he's able to get into the paint, but he doesn't do it like some of the others in the league where it's about speed, it's about force. For him, it's more about, I guess, a little more of a herky-jerky style and using his size and length to his advantage to dodge some of his defenders. I think where he's really struggled clearly is the pull-up jump shooting. It's just not been ever something that he's been strong at, whether it's mid-range or 3. He's not known for being a pull-up jump shooter. But truthfully, I think you want to limit that anyway. I think pull-up jump shooting is a little bit of I'm not going to say it's an art that is outdated, but it's obviously not nearly employed as much as it used to be. I think you want to generate as many catch and shoot opportunity as possible, or if you're going to shoot off the dribble, you want to get all the way to the basket or obviously get fouled, which is something AB does really well. So yeah, the 3-point shooting, even in the catch and shoot for him, needs to improve. I will say, when I watch him in practice, it's automatic. I mean, he does not miss very much in practice. So we'll see if he can integrate that into the games a little bit more. He's been a little inconsistent with the 3-point shooting to this point, but we know he's capable. The last couple of years, he shot really well from the 3-point corners.
Yeah.
We'll see if he can come on a little bit now. But he's also having to juggle 2 different roles. Sometimes he's an on-the-ball player. Sometimes he's a off-the-ball player. So he's having to constantly change assignments. But again, the defense is phenomenal. The finishing is significantly improved. And yeah, he's turning it over a little bit, but I think he's still trying to figure the game out. I think he's still trying to figure out how he can really find his teammates, whether it's through pick and rolls or in situations where he's even a screener. I mean, that's happened a few times where he's been the screener. He can roll in a little bit and then kick out to somebody at the 3-point line or find someone in the dunker spot. He's a good lob tosser. So, and then as we talked about with Franz and Paolo, he's excellent in transition.
Yeah.
Right now, he's 3rd in transition field goal percentage amongst qualified players. So he's doing an excellent job in transition, particularly with his finishing. So really, just to break that down real quick, defense all around great. His rebounding's been good. He's also a pretty good shot blocker for his position. And then he's finishing better. He's crafty. He gets to the free throw line a pretty decent amount. It's just a matter of the jump shooting from mid-range out. And I think those are the main things.
What do you think that is? Because you see him in practice all the time, nailing threes. We see him, in warm-ups and, some practice videos when a Porter will stay and watch them take threes at the end of practice. And it seems like he is a good shooter there. And like you mentioned, he does have a history of being a good corner 3 shooter. With him, he's often left pretty open. Players will go under screens on him so he can get these good percentage looks from 3. Is it do you think it's a mental thing? Do you think it's a tired legs from the defensive thing? Just a little bit of it, all of it. I don't know. I just what do you think has to change for him for that to translate a little bit more in game? I mean, I don't expect him to ever be 40% 3-point shooter, but just a little bit better. What do you think has to happen for a player? And we could say that versus any player. Tyus Jones is someone else who has struggled mightily from 3 in games, which I'm sure in practice he's not missing a single one. What do you think for a player in that kind of situation that is struggling on the court? How do you think that kind of gets fixed?
Well, I think the biggest thing is take what the defense gives you. And like you said, they are going under the screens a lot with AB, and that's going to continue if he's not shooting a high percentage. But I think it's just a matter of confidence.
Sure.
Don't hesitate. If you're open, take it. Obviously, if you're early in the shot clock and that's the look that you have, maybe it is best to sort things out a little bit, get organized and see if you can get an even better shot. But, if you're getting closer and closer to the end of the shot clock and that's your best look, take it.
Yeah.
I don't think there should be any hesitation. So I think it's just a matter of being confident and staying focused, having the discipline and the reality that if you're making them so many times in practice, just trust it, just trust the process. And if it's effective when you're working on your game, then eventually it could be effective in game time. So that would be my kind of best response to that, because we do see him in practice often and he looks very comfortable, very confident. He's knocking down a lot of those threes. So I think it's just a matter of time before we start seeing his 3-point percentage increase a little bit.
Totally. No, that makes sense. All right. This is kind of like a bigger topic that I wanted to talk about. Paolo Banchero. He's out. It doesn't seem like it's going to be long-term. Hopefully he's back in a handful of games. He is a force, right? He's a very special offensive player. I think he's also grown a lot on the defensive end, and he is a key point in the Orlando Magic system. We've seen him kind of be used as a offensive hub at times, as getting him the ball, letting him make the decision maker as he's pulling a double triple team, passing out. And I feel like he's grown a lot in that area in general this season. He's just been, he's having career highs in rebounds. He's having career highs in blocks. He's just, in my opinion, had a pretty darn good year for the most part. We could get nitpicky about certain things, but he's been out for a couple of games now, about 2 3/4. He played 12 minutes in the New York Knicks games, and the offense looks a little bit different, right? The ball seems to flow a little bit differently. It seems to, the fans are just in general, and what I'm seeing and what people are saying is the ball flows nicer. It moves more. And I kind of just want to sit and put some of the negative narrative of we are not a better team without Paolo. Maybe the ball does look a little bit different with him not on the court, but we are not a better team. In my opinion, you have this 6'10" freight train who is a master of taking advantage of mismatches when he's not settling for a poor shot, and has the ability to make smart passes with his passing ability and get to the free throw line. You can't have that player and not utilize those skills, but the ball does move. It seems a little bit more free when he's not on the court. And I just kind of wanted to get your opinions on why that is. How come we can't have similar type of ball movement with him on the court where it looks a little bit more free flow, and just the importance that he brings when he is on, and why the style does shift a little bit with him versus without him right now?
Well, I think clearly, when Paolo's in the game, the goal every single time is to attack the paint, which Paolo is exceptional at. Hopefully, either you draw the double team, and then if that happens, you have at least one person open, obviously, if there's some double coverage, and there'll be a kick out opportunity or someone cutting to the basket for an easy look at the basket. If it's single coverage, then we know Paolo has the skills and the fundamentals to attack his defender and be very creative and obviously draw fouls, which he's one of the best in the league at. So to me, it's all about the gravity that he pulls is so substantial, and obviously opponents are game planning with him with their main focus. And I felt like in the games right before the injury, his decision-making was outstanding.
It was so good.
I brought up the stat before. Teammates are shooting 50% from three, 50, when he sprays the ball out. And that could be from the paint or right above the paint. So right around the foul line or right at the elbows or right after the right after the 3-point line if he does a quick little drive and then a quick spray out, especially when double teams come. So he's been ultra effective at finding the open man based on what the defense is giving him. And it's just a matter of reading it correctly. And he's done an exceptional job of that. I think there was the game against Charlotte where he had 29 and 9, and it was really eye-popping in that game.
I think he had 6 assists by halftime.
Yeah.
He was
just fell short of the triple-double. Yeah.
So good.
So he's top 10 in times getting double teamed as far as his touches. Obviously, the elite players, the elite creators, the elite scorers typically are in that category, whether it's like a Giannis, and nowadays it's, Wemby, and always was LeBron. And now we see some of the others, the up-and-coming guys. Cade Cunningham now ranks in the top 10. Luka Doncic, of course. So he's right up there with those guys in terms of the amount of attention he's getting when he gets a touch. And it's just a matter of what he decides to do with the ball based on what the defense is giving. And the times that he's played exceptionally well, is when he's made the right reads based on whether there's single coverage or double coverage. And to me, like and I think most would agree with this. It's not a matter of how many passes are made. It's a matter of making the right pass, even if it's just one pass. You just got to find the best quality shot in the set that you're running. And to me, the offense is at its best when Paolo is causing the defense to collapse on him, to sort of cause them to really crunch inside, because then he has all the control in the world. He'll either draw a foul, he'll either score over the top of somebody if there's a mismatch, which is another big component. You know, if he gets a guy in the post that he's got a major size advantage, the same thing with Franz. And this has been really effective in transition. It's another reason why they have high transition field goal percentages, is that when they're racing down the floor, if they can find a body of someone that's way smaller than them, they can get a pass right over the top and score right at the rim, or that opponent, that defender will foul them immediately and they'll get to the line. And we've seen that plenty of times now with Paolo and Franz. So I think the game's real simple for these guys because of their advantages, because of their skills, because of their size. And obviously when you're missing, and this would go for any team, if you're missing your best scorer, your best creator, you're going to be forced to do everything more by committee. It's inevitable. Like there's no way around it. You know, all those games in the past when Ja Morant was out for Memphis, it forced Desmond Bane to be a different player than he would be when he was playing with Ja Morant. And the same thing with Paolo and Franz now. Like if Paolo and Franz weren't playing, Desmond would be a completely different player, you know, obviously, because he'd have to do so much more juggle work. So I think based on what we've seen so far, I think the best part is they've been able to adapt.
Yeah.
Regardless of who's on the floor. And remember, like, can do a lot of the things Paolo does.
Yeah, he can, for sure.
He draws a lot of attention. He gets into the paint a lot. He draws a lot of fouls. And he's a really good playmaker, just like Paolo is. Now, the difference there is obviously Franz relies more on footwork, creativity, while Paolo relies more on power, strength, and finesse. But I do think there's a lot of commonality between the two where they can kind of alter their roles based on who else is on the floor. And I feel like they've done a pretty good job of that to this point.
What do you think has been Paolo's biggest strength that he's improved on from last season to this season?
I still think it's the playmaking.
Yeah.
Now, his assist numbers I think the first 3 games he had just 3 assists combined, but then after that he really started surging in that department. I think he's just reading the game better. Yeah, his 3-point shooting is lower. There's no doubt about that to this point. His percentage hasn't been quite what it was last year. I mean, his number one strength since he came into the league was drawing fouls. Now, he's second in the league in drawing shooting fouls. I think Giannis is the only one above him, but that is largely because Paolo's missed the last 2.5 games. Giannis has played more games. I think if that wasn't the case, Paolo would be number one. So his relentlessness drawing fouls is clearly the thing he's extraordinary at, but that's been the case since he came into the league. And I think this got a little more refined. I think he's just a little more aware where he can get the contact, like how to kind of absorb the contact, seek it out. And, you know, the transition game too, because he's 4th in the league right now in transition field goal percentage.
That's crazy.
And part of that, again, is if he's able to get a smaller defender, race ahead, you know, get behind him, easy over the top pass, he could score right at the rim or get fouled. I just think he's making better decisions, and I think he's realizing what it's going to take for him to be, you know, a true superstar in this league, which is what he's blossoming into. All the best offensive players in the league right now are great playmakers.
Yeah.
There's a reason why we're seeing a little bit more of like a stall out with certain guys that maybe are great scorers, but aren't necessarily the best decision makers, the best playmakers, the best facilitators. Paolo came into the league as someone who is 6'10", 250, who can not only score using all of his different tools as a scorer, but he is an elite playmaker because of the combination of the size, the vision, and the instincts. And I think when he's on his A game, we're seeing that play out to the full extent. And the games where the Magic have been most effective, it's because Paolo's playmaking has kind of been at the center of that.
And I mean, it's showing that he's made steps there. He's having, you know, he's averaging less turnovers than he did the season prior. The last 2 seasons, he's, you know, it seems like it's slowed down a little bit more in that area for him. And, you know, some of the stats that you were saying earlier about like his, you know, shots made off of kickouts is, you know, I think it all speaks for himself. I still think there's times where I wish he wouldn't settle for certain shots. Sometimes he'll settle for these kind of like awkwardly poor covered, like mid-range jumpers, or fadeaways. And sometimes those are great for him because he has the ability to make those, particularly if he's got the right defender on him. Sometimes I'm like, man, that was so early in the shot clock. Just pass it to someone else and let's get another look at this opportunity here. But I think those things will continue to like flush themselves out. It's, we were talking before we hit record about this season, kind of like we're already 14 games into the season, but at the same point, there's still a good amount of runway for this team to figure it out. And I kind of want to like start looking at the rest of our conversation a little bit more team-wide now instead of player-wide. There's a few other players I would like to talk about, but we're starting to run out of time, and that's okay. The Magic, we're recording this on Monday, November 17th. Most listeners will be hearing this Tuesday morning. That is the day they play the Golden State Warriors. They're about to have a 3-game homestand. Golden State, the Clippers, and the Knicks are coming into town before they end the month on a 3-game road trip with Boston, Philly, and Detroit. That's kind of what the rest of November looks like for this Magic team. I think we can both agree there's still some things that need to get sorted out. Part of that is just this team needs to get healthy again. We need Jalen Suggs and Paolo Banchero back. It seems like they will likely be back in the next couple of games. Who knows? I know Paolo is already ruled out for the game against the Warriors by the time people are listening to this. And Suggs is listed as questionable. That potentially could change. Probably won't get an update until a little bit before game day. But outside of health, what needs to happen for this team to really be that team we all thought they could be with a much improved offense and an elite defense? I think we've already talked it, like the last 9 games have been really encouraging on both sides of the ball there, but I still think there's a few things that are stopping them from being able to close out a game like they had with the Rockets where, just a few little things go differently and they close it out nicely and even avoid overtime. They haven't had too many like hard tests yet. It's good teams. They beat the Knicks. They did lose to the Pistons, but the schedule gets more challenging. So I guess in my long rambling question to you, what are some of the biggest flaws and weaknesses that this team still needs to work on offense and defense?
Yeah, I think you could break it down into a few different ways. There's a few layers here. I would say the games that they've lost, for the most part, it's been because of different reasons. Early in the season, it was heavy turnovers, heavy fouling. There were a couple games where 3-pointers obviously just were not falling. Against Houston's the best offensive rebounding team in the league. I think that was the main reason that the Magic lost that game. I mean, the Magic had the game won in so many instances, so many moments it felt like they were about to pull away or somehow find a way to pull it out in the end. But the Rockets' offensive rebounding is so good that, they out-rebounded the Magic 60-38 in total. I think they had 19 offensive rebounds, 7 in overtime. So that's what they excel at, and they're able to capitalize on those second chance points. So it's been kind of different reasons from game to game. What we know is they're an improved 3-point shooting team, but they still have to get a little bit better. I would say that right now they're at about 34% from 3, which is still a little bit below league average. That's way better than it was last year when it was 31.8. So if they can increase that just a little bit, I think that would help immensely. We know about the turnovers. They've been better at that lately. They've been in the top 10 the last 6 games. But when they've been at their worst, it's because the turnovers have been just pouring on them. It's been like, thunderstorm after thunderstorm with the turnovers in the games that they lost early in the season. But that's starting to get cleaned up. So I would say if they take care of the ball, which I always think is priority number 1, because if they take care of the ball, they're going to be able to set their half-court defense consistently, which we know they're really exceptional at. The times when opponents have kind of gotten, in rhythm against them, it's because they've been able to push the pace against the Magic, and the Magic haven't been able to set their half-court defense. And I think that's been cleaned up pretty significantly over these last couple weeks. And they've also been fouling less, which was a big problem early in the year. So, those are the main things. We see OKC, I feel like they're a team that the Magic can theoretically be like, because what the Thunder do so well, they do 2 major things well. They crowd the paint so well where they're so handsy, and they prevent you from getting a lot of shots up near the basket. They'll let you shoot a million threes if that's what is required, but they make it really tough to score in the paint because they crowd you, and then they have really good hands. They deflect a lot of passes. They strip the ball away constantly with all their guards. The Magic are capable of being similar. We've seen that in stretches. Not to say they're trying to emulate what the Thunder do, but because the Thunder are the reigning champions, they're always like a nice little kind of an example to use to see what where the trends are, what is
Yeah.
most effective right now in the league. And by the way, the Thunder have been unbelievable, but they're one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the league. Nobody really talks about that in a 3-point shooting league. They have not been efficient from three, but it's not mattering because they suffocate you in defense, and they're efficient at the basket. They get to the line because of Shea. Shea is incredibly efficient. Anyways, the bottom line is, efficiency always matters. And I do think it'll be important for the Magic to be a little more efficient than they've been, because obviously you can't always rely on the whistle. You can't always rely on getting out on the run. So if their half-court offense could be a little bit more smooth, could be smoothened out a little bit, get some more clean looks, improve the efficiency, I would say that's the ticket to making more strides.
Do you think that's just time, them needing to get a little bit more settled with each other?
I think so. I mean, I think it's also important to mention that we're talking about the Eastern Conference here.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not suggesting that if they were in the West that too many things to have to work on to try to climb over some of these other teams. I think the bottom line, though, is when you look at the rest of the Eastern Conference, on paper anyway, it seems to me like pound for pound, they should be able to contend with a lot of these other teams, if not all of them. And I think we saw in the New York game, they were amazing across the board. And that was a perfect example of what this team can be when they're all clicking. They were so locked in defensively in that game. They were getting so many great looks from three at the basket. I mean, across the board, that was like a perfect game for them. So if we're looking for like an example of what this team can be, I think that's the game to look at. Can they string that together over a longer stretch of the season? I think that's the biggest question. And that's what they're obviously going to aim to do.
Yeah, for sure. They're not in necessarily a bad place. They're in ninth place. They're 7-7. They're 2 games out of third. So it's not gonna. It should a good run with this team can get them right back into the top 4 or 5 teams pretty darn easily in the East. And I think that's coming, right? I think that's coming. They were a free throw away potentially from being on a 4-game winning streak, before other things happened. I don't want to relive the Houston game too much longer because I'm sad on that one. It was fun because there's so many good moments. And then, Kevin Durant did Kevin Durant things and Sengun did Sengun things. And I'm a little sad there, but that's okay. But yeah, I'm really high on this team. I still expect them to be one of the top 4 teams in the East when they continue to smooth things out and get a little bit more comfortable with each other. I think, Josh, I'm continuing to remind people, not every we are integrating a new system and a new top priority player. You're not just integrating a new 7th man or a new 5th option as a starter. You're integrating someone so new that communication, trust, timing, that stuff takes a little bit of time, particularly when you're also integrating a little bit more of a complex offensive system, which has shown to be successful so far. They are no longer a bottom 10 offense in the league. Maybe they are if you look at the whole season because the first 5 games were atrocious, but the last 9 games, they've been really solid on the offensive side as well. I believe they're 13th or 14th in the league on the offensive side right there. So yeah, that's just kind of where I try and calm some of the excitement down that people might be thinking in the wrong direction. Josh, we've been talking for 50 minutes. I really am appreciative of your time. I'd love to have you on again later on in the season. We can talk more about the Magic, hopefully with them fighting for a home court or having home court advantage on a nice 8-game winning streak with a nice 7. The game that Desmond Bane hit 7 threes in one game, Josh, I'm calling you. You're coming on the show the next day, all right? I feel like that has to happen.
For sure.
As long as your time can make that happen. So listeners, if you're listening to my podcast, you know where Josh's work is, but Josh, go ahead and let everyone know where they can find you and your work.
Sure. So writing is on OrlandoMagic.com, and then social accounts, I have Twitter, Josh_Cohan_NBA, and then YouTube is the same thing, Josh_Cohan_NBA.
And check out his YouTube and his Twitter. He's particularly his YouTube. He does these great video breakdowns that are really easy and digestible to understand, and they're just high quality basketball content. Josh, thanks again for joining me on the show today, and let's go Magic.
Sounds good. Thanks so much, Steven.